What the hell is going on here? David Blackwood stood frozen in his penthouse doorway, staring at something that should have been medically impossible. His 5-year-old son Tyler, who hadn't walked in 8 months, was dancing. Actually dancing with their new maid, a young black woman he barely knew. But Tyler was supposed to be paralyzed forever. Tyler's legs, which hadn't supported his weight since the diagnosis, were moving with rhythm and purpose. His face, usually pale and hollow, glowed with pure joy as he giggled and swayed to soft jazz music. 3 hours earlier, Dr. Harrison had delivered the final verdict over the phone. Muscular dystrophy is progressive, Mr. Blackwood. Prepare yourself. Tyler's condition will only worsen. Complete wheelchair dependency within 6 months. David had slammed the phone down so hard his mahogany desk cracked. Another specialist. Another dead end. His empire was worth $500 million, but he couldn't buy his son the ability to take a single step. Now he was watching Tyler dance like nothing had ever been wrong. The woman, Kesha Washington, according to her employment file, didn't flinch at his outburst. She gently lowered Tyler to the leather couch and turned to face David with steady, intelligent eyes. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. How is my son standing? What did you give him? What kind of experimental treatment?" "Daddy!" Tyler's voice rang out clear and strong, the most animated he'd sounded in months. "Look what I can do." He pushed himself off the couch with his own arms and took 3 wobbling but determined steps toward his father. His legs shook, but they held his weight. His face beamed with pride. David caught him as he stumbled forward, heart hammering against his ribs. Tyler felt solid in his arms, alive in a way he hadn't been since before Eleanor left them. "This is impossible," David whispered, looking over Tyler's head at Kesha. "The doctors said his muscle deterioration was irreversible. The latest MRI showed—" "The doctors were wrong," Kesha said quietly, her voice carrying absolute certainty. David's hands shook slightly as he stared at her. She couldn't be older than 25. Her background check showed no medical training, just a high school diploma from inner-city Detroit and 3 years of domestic work experience. The agency had sent her because she was one of the few applicants willing to work with a special needs child, and he'd been paying her standard agency rates, never realizing her true qualifications. "Who are you, really?" he demanded, still holding Tyler protectively. Kesha moved to the window, her reflection ghostly in the floor-to-ceiling glass. The city sparkled below them, but her focus was inward, remembering. Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything and fight to get it back. She turned back to them, and David saw something deep and painful in her dark eyes. "I had a little brother, Jamal. He was born with spina bifida. Doctors said he'd never walk, never run, never have a normal life." David sat down heavily in his leather armchair, still cradling Tyler, who was now quietly playing with his father's platinum tie clip. Had. He was seriously injured in a drive-by shooting when he was 7. The trauma from that violence, combined with his physical condition, created the same kind of psychological barriers Tyler is facing. Kesha's voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her white uniform. He survived the shooting, but his spirit was broken. The system failed to give him the emotional support he needed to heal from both traumas. The weight of that revelation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Outside, the October rain that had been threatening all day finally began to fall against the windows in steady sheets. "My mama worked 3 jobs trying to pay for his care. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in East Detroit. No insurance that covered his therapy, no specialists who would see him without payment up front. The system failed him every single day." She paused, gathering strength from somewhere deep inside. "I watched him struggle through months of physical therapy to walk again after the shooting. I was only 13 when it happened, but I made myself a promise that day." "What promise?" David asked softly, his voice barely audible above the rain. "That I would never let another child believe they were broken when they were just lost." Tyler looked up at his father with bright, curious eyes that reminded David so much of Elena before she changed, before the addiction, before she walked out on them both. "Miss Kesha says I'm not broken, Daddy, just scared." David felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut since Elena left them. What do you mean, buddy? My legs got scared when Mommy went away and never came back. But Miss Kesha taught them how to be brave again. The simple honesty of it nearly destroyed David. He looked at Kesha with new understanding, seeing her clearly for the first time since she'd walked into their lives 3 weeks ago. You're not just a maid, are you? Kesha's smile was sad but proud. I've been a lot of things, Mr. Blackwood. Physical therapy assistant at Detroit General until they laid me off during budget cuts. Occupational therapy aide at Children's Hospital of Michigan until it lost state funding. I even completed 2 years of nursing school at Wayne State before I couldn't afford tuition anymore. David felt deeply ashamed of his assumptions. Here he'd been paying her standard agency rates, treating her like invisible help, when she had more medical knowledge than most of the expensive specialists who'd failed his son. Why didn't you tell me your background when I hired you? Would you have believed me? A young black woman from the projects claiming medical expertise. Her tone wasn't bitter, just matter of fact. Or would you have assumed I was another opportunist trying to take advantage of your desperation? He had no answer because she was absolutely right. He would have dismissed her immediately, probably had security escort her out. Besides, Kesha continued, sitting cross-legged on the Persian rug that cost more than most people made in a year. Credentials don't heal children. Connection does. Understanding does. Sometimes love does what medicine can't. But the medical tests, the MRI results, the specialists from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, all looked at Tyler like a collection of symptoms instead of a little boy drowning in trauma. Kesha's voice grew stronger, more confident. Mr. Blackwood, Tyler doesn't have muscular dystrophy. The room went completely silent, except for Tyler's soft humming as he arranged his toy cars in a perfect line on David's lap, organizing them by color just like his mother used to teach him. That's impossible. 5 different specialists confirmed the diagnosis. We have genetic tests. 5 specialists who ran the same battery of tests, made the same assumptions based on his symptoms, and never bothered to really observe him as a whole person. Kesha pulled out a small notebook filled with her careful handwriting. I've been documenting Tyler's behavior patterns for 3 weeks. His muscle tone is actually excellent. His reflexes are completely normal. His coordination and balance are age-appropriate when he's relaxed and feels safe. She flipped through pages of detailed observations, charts tracking his movements, mood, and physical responses throughout different times of day and various activities. Watch this, she called softly. Tyler, sweetheart, can you show Daddy how you can hop like a bunny? Without hesitation, Tyler slid off David's lap and began hopping alternately on each foot, laughing as he counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look, Daddy, I'm a bunny rabbit just like in Mommy's stories. David's mouth fell open. That morning, Tyler couldn't even lift his legs to get out of bed. How is that possible? This morning he couldn't even... This morning, he was anxious because the physical therapist was coming, the one who kept telling him to try harder and push through the pain. Right now he feels safe because it's just us, playing together like normal children do. Kesha closed her notebook and looked directly into David's eyes. Tyler has what's called conversion disorder. It's when severe emotional trauma causes very real physical symptoms. Think of it as his brain's way of protecting him from overwhelming pain. David's legs felt weak. He gripped the arm of his chair. You're saying it's psychological? I'm saying his brain created a very real physical response to unbearable emotional pain. Kesha leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. When his mother abandoned them, when he saw you struggling to be both parents, when doctors kept running painful tests, his nervous system essentially shut down his ability to walk as a way to cope. David's hands were shaking now. He pressed them against his knees to steady them. But the muscle weakness, the fatigue, the complete inability to bear weight for months, all very real symptoms that get dramatically worse when he's stressed or scared, and significantly better when he feels secure and loved. She gestured toward Tyler, who was now doing an impromptu dance routine to music only he could hear. That's not progressive muscular dystrophy, Mr. Blackwood. That's a little boy's nervous system trying to cope with overwhelming trauma. The implications crashed over David like a tsunami. He sat down hard in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. Every expensive test, every painful procedure, every moment of despair had been based on a complete misunderstanding. "Are you telling me that my complete breakdown after Elena left us made him sick?" Kesha's expression immediately softened. She moved closer, kneeling beside his chair. "I'm telling you that trauma is incredibly complex, and healing happens when we feel safe enough to let it. Tyler wasn't trying to get sick. You weren't trying to make him sick. You were both drowning in pain, and sometimes when we're drowning, we grab onto whatever feels like it might keep us afloat." Tyler suddenly stopped his dancing and walked over to his father with steady, confident steps that should have been medically impossible. "Daddy, why are your eyes leaking again?" David hadn't realized tears were streaming down his face. He pulled Tyler back onto his lap, holding him tight, feeling the solid warmth of his son's healthy body. "Because I'm happy, buddy. Happier than I've been in a very long time. Miss Kesha taught me that sometimes happy tears and sad tears look the same on the outside, but they feel completely different inside your heart." David looked at Kesha over Tyler's head, his voice thick with emotion, his throat tight. "How did you know? How did you see what million-dollar specialists with decades of experience completely missed?" "Because I watched my brother struggle with the same kind of trauma-related barriers. The difference is, Tyler still has someone who loves him fighting for him." She smiled softly. "And because I spent 3 hours on my first day just playing with him. No tests, no evaluations, no medical equipment. Just blocks and toy cars and silly songs. And I noticed that every time he laughed, his legs moved naturally. Every time he felt completely safe and forgot about being sick, his balance and coordination were perfect. Every time he stopped being a medical case and became just a regular little boy, his body remembered how to be healthy." Tyler wiggled out of David's arms and began building an elaborate tower with his blocks, chattering happily about his architectural plans and how he was going to build a house for his toy dinosaurs. His movements were fluid, natural, completely normal for a 5-year-old with no physical limitations. The doctors said his condition was progressive, that he'd need a wheelchair for life, that we should prepare for complete muscle deterioration. The doctors saw what they expected to see based on his symptoms during the most traumatic period of his life. She watched Tyler play, her voice growing stronger. But trauma-based disorders like this can heal completely with the right support and emotional safety. Tyler doesn't need experimental surgeries or expensive medications. He needs to feel safe, loved, and believed in. David watched his son stack blocks with steady hands, his legs tucked beneath him in a position that should have been impossible given his supposed muscle weakness and joint problems. What kind of support? The kind that's been happening naturally for 3 weeks. Play instead of therapy, routine and predictability, emotional safety and unconditional acceptance, someone who sees his potential instead of his limitations. Kesha paused meaningfully, and most importantly, someone who can model emotional healing and stability for him. What do you mean? Children's nervous systems mirror what they see in their primary caregivers, Mr. Blackwood. Tyler hasn't been able to feel safe enough to heal while you've been lost in your own trauma from Elena's abandonment. The truth of it hit him like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on Tyler's medical condition that he'd never addressed his own emotional collapse after Elena left them. I haven't been present for him at all, have I? I've been so focused on finding a medical cure that I never just saw him as my son who needed his father. You've been doing what any loving parent would do, fighting desperately for your child's health and future. But Tyler doesn't need you to fight his battles or fix his problems. He needs you to believe he's capable of healing and to create a safe space where that healing can happen naturally. Tyler suddenly appeared at his father's knee, holding up a toy dinosaur with a big smile. "Daddy, do you want to play with me? Miss Kesha taught me that dinosaurs can walk anywhere they want to go, and they're never afraid of anything because they're brave and strong." David took the dinosaur with shaking hands, seeing the metaphor clearly. "Yes, buddy. I want to play with you more than anything in the world." As Tyler settled back on the rug, creating an elaborate dinosaur adventure, complete with sound effects and detailed storylines, David looked at Kesha with newfound respect and overwhelming gratitude. How do I ever repay you for this? For giving me back my son, for showing me what real healing looks like. You don't repay me, Mr. Blackwood. You show up for him every single day, not as the CEO who's too overwhelmed by business crises to notice his child is drowning emotionally, but as Tyler's father who believes in him completely. David nodded, his throat too tight to speak for several moments. And Mr. Blackwood, Tyler's healing isn't finished. Disorders like this can fluctuate, especially during times of stress or major changes. He's going to need consistency, understanding, and someone who knows how to support him when trauma tries to resurface. You, David said immediately, I want you to stay, not as domestic help, as Tyler's therapeutic care coordinator, his developmental specialist, whatever title feels right to you. I'll triple your salary, whatever it takes. Kesha shook her head slowly. I don't want more money, Mr. Blackwood. Then what do you want? She looked at Tyler, who was now making elaborate sound effects for his dinosaur battle, completely absorbed in normal childhood play. I want you to take him to Central Park tomorrow morning. Push him on the swings. Let him climb on playground equipment and fall down and get back up like every other 5-year-old in New York City. Done. What else? I want you to get rid of those specialists and find a pediatric psychologist who understands trauma-informed care for children who've experienced abandonment. Absolutely done. I want you to remove all the medical equipment from his bedroom, the hospital bed, the monitors, the mobility aids, and replace it with toys and books and things that make him feel like a regular, healthy kid. I'll have it done tonight. And I want you to start seeing a grief counselor yourself. Tyler needs his father back, not just someone who loves him from an emotional distance. David was quiet for a long moment, watching his son play with an ease and joy he hadn't seen in almost 2 years. The realization of how much time they'd lost to misunderstanding hit him hard. You're asking me to completely change how I understand my child, my role as a father, my entire approach to life. I'm asking you to trust that Tyler is stronger than his trauma, braver than his fears, and more resilient than any medical diagnosis could ever capture. I'm asking you to live your life instead of just surviving it. Tyler suddenly jumped up and ran over to them, grabbing both their hands with slightly sticky fingers. Can we all have dinner together? Miss Kesha makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches, and she cuts the crusts off in triangles just like Mommy used to do before she went away. The casual mention of Elena didn't bring the usual stab of overwhelming pain and anger. Instead, David felt something warm and healing in the connection between past memories and present hope. Would you stay for dinner? David asked Kesha. Please. I'd really love that. She smiled, the first completely unguarded, joyful smile he'd seen from her. I'd love that too. As they walked toward the dining room, Tyler between them, walking confidently on his own 2 feet and chattering about his day, David realized something fundamental had shifted in the universe, not just in Tyler's legs, but in the very foundation of who they were as a family. Kesha, he said as Tyler ran ahead to wash his hands in the kitchen. Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Thank you for seeing what I was too broken to see myself. Thank you for believing in my son when I'd almost given up hope. She squeezed his shoulder gently. Sometimes we all need someone to remind us how to walk through the darkness and find the light again. And sometimes, Tyler called from the kitchen sink, we need someone to teach us how to dance in the rain. David and Kesha looked at each other and burst out laughing, real, deep, healing laughter that filled the penthouse with life and possibility. For the first time in 2 years, David Blackwood felt like a father instead of just a man haunted by loss and abandonment. And in that moment, he realized that the impossible thing Kesha had done wasn't just helping his son walk. She had taught them both how to live again. 6 months later, Tyler was running through Central Park on a bright spring morning, chasing pigeons and laughing as David tried to keep up. Kesha sat on a nearby bench, watching them with quiet satisfaction. The medical equipment was gone, replaced by art supplies and building blocks. The specialists had been replaced by a wonderful child psychologist who focused on play therapy and family healing. And David had learned that the most powerful medicine isn't found in hospitals or prescription bottles. Sometimes healing comes from being truly seen, deeply understood and unconditionally loved exactly as you are, Tyler hadn't been able to walk for the past 8 months. The symptoms started gradually after Elena left, but became complete paralysis when the endless medical tests began. But now, watching his son race across the grass with unlimited energy, David understood that some miracles don't require medical intervention. They just require someone who refuses to give up on love. If this story moved your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove love can heal what medicine cannot touch. Comment below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love connecting with our global family. Also, share a time when someone believed in you when you couldn't believe in yourself. Remember, sometimes the most powerful miracles happen not when we try to fix someone, but when we simply love them exactly as they are.